Welcome to the Athletic Skills Podcast, the show where we help sports coaches, S&C coaches and PE teachers learn how they can impact their athletes' movement and physical development in a fun, practical way. I'm your host, Isaac, founder of Athletic Skills, and in today's episode we chat to Molly Moore, who is a golf coach and founder of Girls Golf Excellence. Molly discussed how she develops female golfers from youth to experienced levels and what is involved from a skill development, physical aspect of the game and the importance of mindset. She discusses how she integrates strategies to develop emotional control and decision-making into her training. And also Molly highlights the importance of mobility, power and fundamental movement and how a warm-up can change how a golfer can perform on the course. This podcast is brought to you by Brendan Chaplin Business Coaching. Brendan guides coaches and service-based entrepreneurs to deliver their best work, build a seven-figure lifestyle and performance business, and create a life of freedom. I started working with Brendan in September 2023, and it's been a great journey since I started working with him in launching my own business, Athletic Skills. Brendan has been fully invested in me and is a great person to chat with, to share ideas, and has vast knowledge and experiences to share also. The reason I picked to work with Brendan is that he has done it himself in launching businesses and has a similar background to myself in S&C and wants to live a life that you want. If you want to speak to Brendan on how he can help create a life of freedom and guide you on that journey, get in touch with him by one of the methods in the show notes and DM him the word coach and he will start the conversation. You won't regret it and there's a good chance it might just change your life too. Hi everyone, welcome to the Athletic Skills Podcast. I'm delighted to have Molly Moore on with me. So Molly is a golf coach and founder of Girls Golf Excellence. So Molly, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you. So Molly, I just want to give a bit of a description on how you've become a golf coach and why you've gone into the female side of golf specifically as well.
I've played golf since I was about 8 years old. Come from sort of an equine background. Used to do a lot of horse riding, typical school sports. And then when I was about 9 years old, I fell off and dislocated my elbow twice in 2 years. Not a great outcome. I just fell into golf by accident. My dad suggested it to me. He wasn't a golfer at the time. But I was intrigued. So I went and tried it when I was about 9 years old, fell in love with it instantly. And then it grew from there in terms of carrying on at my club. I went into a county level, a little bit of regional level. And then when I was 18, I went to university in Birmingham and I completed the applied golf management degree. And that kind of led me down the route of knowing I wanted to coach. I did different placements abroad and in the UK. And the management side of things just wasn't really like my client. And I noticed it was more coaching and that was my interest really. So I started to pursue that on the later placements I did. I graduated university in 2020. So it was a COVID graduation. And I was quite lucky then because it gave me a lot of time to think about what I wanted. I managed to secure my job down at Reigate Hill in Surrey, at Surrey Golf Lab. And I wanted to go into like the elite side of things and European Tour. It's something just still wasn't clicking in place for me. And I was very lucky to be involved in Surrey Girls Golf. And that was when it hit me over Christmas of 2022 that this is what I wanted to do full time. And I could see a disparity between obviously the numbers of girls and boys in golf, how girls are developed through their golf journey, and thought I could potentially offer a good academic system for them to develop in golf and thrive in their later years. So that's when I started Girls Golf Excellence. And we started off just with 4 girls that I was already teaching. We brought them together in a group to do group training style rather than focus one-to-one stuff. And that grew to now about 25 girls who obviously don't all come at once. I don't think we're to manage, but we all meet up for monthly trainings. They have one-to-one programs. And they compete right down from beginners up to a county level.
And having been involved yourself as a player and a coach, so you mentioned a little bit there around female golf as a whole. How's that developed over the years you've been involved in, and is it gone in the right direction? Has it progressed quite a bit over the recent years?
It's progressing. I wouldn't say we're fully there yet. I'm someone who always wants more from situations, so probably are there more girls playing from when I was maybe 12, 13, 14? Yes. There are more options becoming available, but I still think there needs to be better understanding of developing female athletes compared to male, just through different societal conditions. Obviously, we are same needs when we're born, but through society as we develop, we get conditioned differently.
So you mentioned there's some differences there in terms of developing male and female golfers. So let's just touch on the similarities first. So what sort of key elements are you looking for as a coach when you're developing a golfer, and what you're looking out for as well?
So making the golfer, for me, is their ability to perform their skills under pressure. Because golf is one of the few sports where maybe the competition is a lot harder than the training. So I always use the example to students, it's like a 100-meter sprint. Obviously, the training is brutal for a very short amount of time for competition, whereas golf is the opposite. It's very easy to slip into a simple practice habit, and then the actual competition will be really tricky. I'm looking for players who can actually utilize their skills on the golf course rather than just the golf ball, if that makes sense. So actually being able to score potentially even if their swing and their strike patterns aren't good for that day.
So psychological element plays a massive part in terms of going under pressure, and especially as an individual sport, you're on your own. There's a lot of time to think as well. So that'll play a big part in terms of their development and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the psychological and the physical are linked. So if you're mentally not prepared or not resilient, I think that's going to feed into your physical health of how fast you can swing, how mobile you are, and how you're able to apply those skills on the golf course as well.
And then people talk a lot about club head speed as a big factor in terms of golf performance. Is that a big consideration in what you're looking for in your golfers in terms of their skill development and the physical side as well?
Yeah, massive. And sort of we're coming into that phase now being October. So we split the summer up into maybe the fundamental scoring skills and being able to get the lowest score possible. Whereas when you turn into winter, we're not playing as much, we're not competing, it's off season, which is when I'll then turn the focus into more speed development, ability training, that sort of thing. And especially when someone comes into the sport, if they've got loads and loads of power, but not a lot of control, we can work with that. But I'd say it's harder if there's control but not powerful, because something's just wired a little differently. Actually being able to let go of the consequences and being able to hit the goal ball hard is a lot trickier than people might believe. Just through how you've grown up and learned to control the ball. So if someone can learn to hit it harder pretty early on in their journey as a coach, I think that's a lot more
So
beneficial.
as we're moving into like, so the off season, so you've got more time to spend on the physical side. What different physical elements are you looking for or looking to develop for your players when you've got a lot more time available now to work on those areas?
So I always talk to the girls about the relationship between balance and speed. That's how we always relate our sessions, and they're only going to be as speedy as they are balanced. They're growing all the time, they go through growth spurts, growing pains, clumsiness. So it's always about making sure that, yes, okay, you got buckets of speed. Now can you use it in a golf course setting? We tend to do a lot of band work throughout the winter. Warm-up is a crucial thing, as kids can still get injured, unfortunately. Really getting them into a good routine of warm-up through the bands that we use. Simple things that they can take to the first tee with them. Nothing that's going to add 30 minutes onto their routine, but simple things that are going to keep them supple and mobile, especially in the colder winter months. I would tend not to use any sort of weight, maybe just body weight and bands. I think that's plenty for, especially when you go to like under 12s. They're still growing. We don't want to put too much stress on joints. And then when we focus on our speed training, I'd say we always make a measurement of the max speed they can get to. Then we might do training with like the speed sticks. Then we take another max measurement to see if we can up that. And if we're able to increase the max speed over a 3-month, 4-month period, we'll see their sort of natural playing swing speed, as I call it, increase from the golf course as well.
So we'll touch on the first side, so around warm-ups and balance and mobility areas. So what sort of areas are you looking to mobilize and or to activate prior to you go on the first tee? So what are the key areas you're looking to focus on if you only had a short amount of time?
I'd say definitely through spine and pelvis is really important, because the golf swing can actually be quite a mini trauma on the body. We're traveling at, the girls, let's say, are traveling at 60 miles per hour club head speed. And if they're going straight out the car to the first tee and doing that, there's going to be some achy pains and niggles that might come about. It's about getting loose through potentially the spine area, through hips, through shoulder joints, And they can do exercise that we use at the club in terms of getting the scapulars moving, getting pelvis moving, just to make sure when we start that rotating course, the body's ready.
And has there been much pushback or in terms of buy-in, in terms of warm-ups? And do you have any strategies that you use to try and get players to warm up prior to just going straight out and trying to hit balls for?
It's always going against their habits. And I'll hold my hands up and say that when I was their age, did I rock up late for my tea time and run to the first tee? Yes. But so that's why I'm trying to learn from my mistakes and encourage them a better routine. A lot of them do take it well. I try to make it in so everyone's doing it at the same time. No one's being singled out for, you show me this movement, or you have to go do this in the first tee when there's 10 people around you. We make it so it's accessible for them all to do. So there's no excuses to not do it. Ability for them to do it in the changing room, at home, on the first tee. So they can utilize their own golf clubs. If they don't have bands, they can then make allowances for that. And just for making it on their terms. So involving them in the decision making of what do you need to be doing. And I potentially show them some stats of when they're not warmed up, how fast they're swinging, when they are warmed up, how fast they're swinging, and then the impact that's going to make on the golf course. And then the penny starts to drop a little bit and they see the benefit of it.
I was going to say, have you seen any performance differences, or have they seen any changes in terms of performance on the first tee or the first hole after they've done a warm up? Because, like you said, that'll get a big buy in terms of if they actually see the difference in terms of their actual play.
I think it has two caveats to it, really. Obviously, they see the physical side of being able to just swing a little bit faster, a little bit freer, covered in layers in the winter because it's cold. But also the mental side of it is they've actually hit shots before. So this isn't the first shot of the day going, oh my gosh, where's it going to go? So they might be on the driving range before or in the net and they've actually worked out a miss for the day. So they might say, slightly got the left today. So they can then adapt on that on the first tee rather than going, I'm not sure where this is going to go. So I think it's a double-edged sword to it, really.
We'll touch on the balance side, and then you mentioned you look at speed as well. You said you assess first and see what their club head speed is, and then you look to see whether they can improve that over time. What sort of drills or exercises are you looking to do to develop their speed? You mentioned the speed stick, but is there anything else that you look to use as well?
So we tend to do some sort of basic work with the ground and actually being able to load into their feet and into the ground more. A lot of them tend to neglect maybe their core and their glute strength. It's pretty well known that the higher you can jump, the faster you have the potential to swing, not just the faster you'll swing, but it's the potential. So we do a lot of work with like explosive movement. So you might do long jumps, vertical jumps, and it keeps it fresh for them as well, rather than just constant goals. Right. That athletic side does break the training up for them. So we'll go through a series of exercises where we choose 3 for the day. I'll let them lead it because then it gives them responsibility and not just me dictating all the time. So we'll cover explosive movements, strike control as well is important. So if they're obviously swinging really quickly, great, but also can they still have that strike element to unlock the distance? So being able to convert your swing energy into golf ball energy.
And you mentioned if you use bands in your coaching, do you use any medicine balls as in terms of power or ballistic exercises as well?
We haven't used medicine balls actually, no. We just tend to use the bands and any sort of platforms we find for jumping.
And then do you work on you mentioned, so you start the lower body, then it works through the trunk. Do you do any trunk-based work as well in terms of stability or power development?
Yes, so we try, and especially do one-legged movements to try and build stability and balance through the core. It's not the most popular exercise in the world, but we managed to get through. So a lot of rotational one-leg movements. We use the long bands that can go around our backs, they just have a whole host of benefits. We'll have the short bands going around the knees for side-to-side movements. So trying to keep it varied is key.
So in the winter, you've got quite a bit of time to look to develop these areas. So how often would you look to develop these over a week, or have you got a specific block that you work on this and you may transition to something else?
Yeah, so generally we run monthly events as a group, and that's like an all-day event. So we'll have 10 till 4 all day. We'll spend the morning coaching and usually the afternoon playing, winter weather dependent. So we might end up coaching in the afternoon as well, or training. That's quite a benefit in itself. Because although I want them to play and transfer these skills on course, it's good to actually get down to the nitty-gritty of sometimes it have a longer period on these movements and exercises. I try to set homework, so they have their own journals and they'll be able to write down the ones that were important to them, and they can record their scores afterwards, and they're pretty good at doing it. So they come back to me with some results, and I think it's never going to be snap your fingers and an amazing routine is built, but you can at least nudge players along the way to building these habits. And if they start those habits from when they start playing golf, it would just be part of their natural routine as they get older.
So in the winter, you mentioned you do a bit of speed profile in terms of your players. Do you do any other areas that you focus on in terms of assessing, in terms of the physical side?
Speed is probably the most we focus on. We tend to do some maybe like pressure drills, how they can perform those skills in a certain environment. But speed is our main focus.
And then you're moving in season, so in the summer. So do you still have time to focus on these physical areas, or do you just maybe use the warm-up specifically for that, to that development?
Yeah, so warm-up's going to be the bread and butter of what we do. There may be opportunities to incorporate the speed and the physical side as well, but generally it moves on to the scoring, the competing, and the mindset part, rather than just purely the physical. So it takes more of a back seat, but it's still the core pillar of what we do.
So we've talked a lot about the similarities in terms of the male and females or golf as a whole. So with the female side, are there any specific differences that you maybe focus on more when you're working on females compared to males?
I think it's still the emphasis that distance is important. And you see maybe when you're listening to tour playing, coaching, tour playing, commentating, how the different descriptions to male and female, and they're maybe not as described as powerful, maybe than the male athlete. And I think it's making it clear that's still an important side. There's going to be obviously different physical structures within the body, but generally at the children's age, I wouldn't make huge differences. And any differences we find are maybe because of different society conditioning and labeling of what girls can do and what boys can do.
Is there any physical side in terms of, I don't know how often females in golf maybe get ACL injuries, which is quite common in terms of other female sports, or lower back injuries or shoulder injuries. I've seen more in females. In males, is there any injuries that are more prevalent in terms of female golf that you have to maybe consider as well?
I think with golf, because the golf swing is so impactful on the body, I haven't really seen a pattern of what injuries between male and female, but you generally see sort of joint problems like wrists, knees, lower back, like you mentioned before, just because that turning force is so much for the body to cope with on a regular basis. So I'd say that's the most prominent, but between male and female, I haven't noticed a pattern, especially at a junior level as of yet. And I think the most pains that can come about is growing pains, really. And as they grow and become clumsier, the movement might get a little bit out of control. The back might start to extend. Obviously, they're so supple and flexible that you've then got to be really careful that they're not overexerting the body the wrong way.
And that growth spurt or maturation phase is a key phase in terms of their development physically and mentally. So as a coach, what sort of considerations are you looking at when you've got people going through this phase, and how might you change your coaching style or coaching drills to accommodate this sort of big change that's happening at the moment?
It would depend on really what time of year it was. So I think the worst time maybe for it to happen in their eyes is mid-season when they're competing. Now, I'd probably be pretty upfront and explain why they're going through this process, rather than just trying to, if I acknowledge myself, okay, it's growth spurt, maturation, but if they're not aware of it, they need to be informed on that decision as well, so they can have a better understanding and processing of what's going on. So I tend to strip it right back to the fundamentals of basic strike. So being able to get that golf ball around the course, especially if it's competing season, being able to manage so body movements aren't getting too excessive. So we're not seeing too much spine tilt. We're not seeing sort of anything that's going to cause potential injury. And just reassuring them along the way that obviously the growth is only temporary. And that when they do finish that spurt, they'll be able to manage and regulate not just the body, but the emotions that come with it as well.
Yeah, and I found personally in my coaching, it's the mental side that is more hard for them in terms of they might be one of the best players in the team or one of the best players in their group, but then as soon as they go through their growth spurt and they suddenly think, oh, I can't do what I used to do before. So it's then educating them, but also the parents as well in terms of managing their expectations, especially if there's a selection process going on or, like you say, competitions going on, to have that understanding that it's just temporary, and once they start to retrain and learn how their potential can increase even more.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest toll it can have on them, is actually the frustration of, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. I mean, I've gone through phases in my early 20s of when I used to do a lot of heavy weightlifting in the gym, and now I've got away from that and don't enjoy that anymore. And now I'm really not hitting the golf ball as far. I don't know. It's really sad. When I used to be able to hit it this fast, swing at this miles per hour, and now I've lost that a little bit. And as I've got older, I've witnessed sort of different injuries, so ankles and lower back. I'm just not able to perform the same skills. But obviously, I've got the mindset to be able to accept it. Whereas if you're 14, 15, going through growth sports, hormones changes, it can be such a lot to manage. And I think it's important that they're involved in that and you're clear and have clarity with us what's going on at the time.
So as you mentioned just then and at the start, around the emotional controls plays a big part in terms of a goals development, and especially when match play is a lot harder than the actual training. So how do you start to bridge the gap then between, in terms of your training, in terms of the demands and the pressure to try and match what's going on the course?
Obviously, we get players up to a basic level of skill development. So they're able to strike a golf ball on a drive range with no consequence. They're then able to be able to do that on the golf course with no pressure, so maybe a practice round, social round. The biggest gap then is taking that into a competitive round when they're counting shots, they're playing against players, they're in competitions, there's consequences. Probably one of my favourite things to do is the failure tasks. And everyone says I take great satisfaction from it. I try not to, but essentially maybe a series of 4 challenges and they have to complete all 4 in a row. And that just creates the coaching opportunities in itself, because all you have to do is sit back and watch and you'll see them hit that wall. And that's when you can educate and coach on the resilience and the mindset and the emotional control. And there's so many different formats of that we do within a session. And when I first trialed it out about a year ago, I didn't know how it would go. It was the first time I'd adopted that style of coaching. And I remember it was a rain day and they absolutely loved it. They were out there for 3 or 4 hours in the rain, just carrying on because they really wanted to finish. So I think it can grow that affinity and love for the sport as well, because they really want to complete whatever challenge you set. But it's also catching them on the downslope of maybe they didn't complete it. So you do have to be a little bit brutal as a coach sometimes, in a nice way, to get them in that state. And like I said earlier, how the training is so different from the competition, you've got to make that clear for them and set a level within their training that matches competition. So then when they're in that situation, and like you said before, they're on their own, they've got to make this decision, they can cope with that a lot better than if they would do before training.
Have you had a scenario in your coaching in the past where a young golfer has maybe struggled in those failure tasks, in terms of they might be either giving up straight away or they just can't get over that hurdle? And did you find any strategies that you might have used to try and get them to progress in that area?
Yeah, a lot actually, because some of them don't complete the task of the day. Some of them might fly through it. I try not to let that happen, because otherwise there's no point to the task. But yeah, it's hard because as a coach, and obviously with care for the athlete, you want to step in and tell them it's all okay. But in reality, that's not going to help them. You have to ride the wave of maybe failure and struggle with them, help them identify why it's happening. And then you can relate it back down to the actual fundamental physical coaching and technical coaching of, okay, why maybe did your skill break down in this task? And then that's when it relates into their one-to-one programs. And then it helps see facts and reasons rather than emotional reasons like, I'm just not good enough. You can actually bring, well, actually this happened, and bring facts and statements rather than just opinion-based. And that has a big effect. I think you see it less maybe in a training scenario, but more on course. If I just set a simple competition, you will see a different mindset and a different attitude but you'll also see the sort of tightrope of if they do fall, how you support them in that bit as well. And sometimes you do just have to let them work through it at their own pace. You can't rush them. I've had girls that I work with that come and they're very anxious, riding like a perfectionist train. And are they completely transformed at the minute? No, but they're a lot more aware and they employ the right things to be able to overcome it, really.
And then do you use similar strategies or drills to develop decision making or confidence or other psychological elements that are a key out on the course as well?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of having this in a group scenario, is that often the other players are the key instrumental role in this rather than me. I see my role in a group of setting the environment and the challenge, and the group kind of takes over, really. If we care from one another, I don't even think they realise they're doing it, but you'll see each other boost them up and things like that. And like, the more they get used to accepting the consequences and accepting failure, the more the confidence boosts, but you've got to let them see those successes as well and where their focus is. So we do a lot of in their journals, again, that they do the physical side notes, they have their mental side and their emotional side. And we do a lot of strategies of goal setting. We recap, and then I think it was about a year ago that we wrote out our 2024 goals. So we'll be in the next session in November, we'll be revisiting them. And I've already seen a bunch of goals haven't achieved, but I don't think they actually can click that that's linked back to the goals set in November. And that is an instant win, really, to get the confidence boosted, motivation. And it works both ways, that if obviously we make training harder, but if training is too hard, then it will cause demotivation. But if it is too easy, then it's complacency, things like that. So finding that balance is really
And
key.
it's finding the balance for the right individual, which is every person's different in a group setting. It's quite hard to manage different personalities or different individuals' needs and when you've got a larger group.
Yeah, and I think if you've got older children who aren't maybe as able as younger, I think that can play a massive role as well. You think they're 4 years younger than me, but they can hit it further and straighter. How is that a thing? So you have to be careful with how you group them up, or providing a reason as to why they might be a bit more athletic and a bit more able. And sometimes it's just experience. Someone might have been playing since they were 4 and they're now 10, and someone might have been playing since they're 10 and they're now 14. But that's how we're able to navigate maybe like the structures we put on the golf course, and when we do the training on course, making the group make it work, and the partnering needs to be ideal for everyone involved, really.
So I just want to finish off on one physical side that you mentioned prior to when we were on a chat around the FMS screening or functional movement screening. Is one element of your coaching that you maybe do probably in the pre-season, in the winter time. So can you just talk through your FMS screening process and why you involve that in your coaching?
I think it's good to know any, not just mobility issues, but maybe like hypermobile issues. And I find that in particular in golf swings, a lot of extension through the spine, maybe. And that's a common way to lead to injury. So I think it's good to understand a player's basic body structure and movement pattern before you go any further, as then you're able to coach knowing what their limits are as well.
So what makes up your FMS screen when you're looking at a golfer? So what sort of drills or exercises you're looking at to try and pick out those either areas of the arms mobile or more hypermobile?
So generally in the off season, we'll go sort of the TPI, Titleist Performance Institute screenings. So we'll do 90-90 tests through the shoulder and scapula. We'll be looking through the pelvis rotation, what degree they can get rotated. Strength through the glutes, I think, is important, because if the glutes don't have the strength, so we do bridge tests to make sure that they've got the appropriate glute strength, or that we can build on that, because otherwise the lower back tends to take over in the loading of things, and again, that's where injuries caused. So making sure that the key rotational aspects are in good working order to be able to apply the speed training that we do at a later date.
And how often do you do this each year? So do you do a pre and post? Do you do a pre, mid and post, and then have some exercise in between to see what the differences are?
Yeah, I'd say you probably do it every quarter. And then it's good to check in, because you go from mid-season to end of season. They may be a bit more physically exhausted, actually, end of season, because they've got the summer holidays, they're playing so much. that you might just find things have tightened up over time. And then you can then work on it throughout the winter season then to get ready for the next season.
So just to finish up on, if there's any golf coaches listening who maybe interested in starting to add a bit more physical based work into their coaching or into their drills or into their training, have you got any advice in terms of how they can start to do that with some easy wins maybe?
I'd say just understanding maybe that you have to go with juniors a little bit different than you would with adults, because I think juniors tend to maybe not follow routines as religiously as maybe an adult would. So understanding the difference in body movements, they might be a little bit more flexible, a bit more supple, and how they probably don't need weight exercise, especially if they're under 12, because you don't want to put pressure on joints and ligaments. And just giving the responsibility over to them really in terms of, okay, so how can you collate maybe what you do in PE or football or netball, and how can we bring this into a golf context? Because a lot of the golf-specific exercises aren't that far away from general stuff. We just link it into maybe how it impacts the golf swing more. So being able to have a sort of a base level knowledge of general sporting activities they do and cherry pick up then to help them bring their own routine.
No, that's great. And over this call, I think there's some great advice, especially from the female side and the youth side as well, which is two topics that are really key in terms of coaches to understand. So thank you very much for sharing some great information. So if anyone's got any questions, Molly, is there any way people can get in touch with you just to have questions in terms of either female development or the golf development as a whole?
Yeah, so they can contact me via any of my socials, which is golf coaching. The Girls Golf Excellence Instagram is, and I'm also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I'll put those in the show notes for anyone that wants to get in touch. So thank you, Molly, for your time. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Athletic Skills Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and found it helpful in learning more about impacting your youth athletes' movement and physical development. If you did enjoy this episode, please take a moment to give us a subscribe and share to any other coaches or teachers that you think it may help. Also, if you have any feedback or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or on the email in the description, and we'll be more than happy to try and tackle those challenges you are facing as a sports coach or a PE teacher. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. I look forward to speaking to you soon.